right, my friends, it is now time for the Soulful Psalms segment of Beacon of Truth. The Soulful Psalms, we take one of the Psalms from the book of sung praises from the wisdom literature of the Old Testament that we hear in each and every holy sacrifice of the Mass, and we connect that Psalm to your everyday lived experience. I'm using the Revised Grail Psalms, which were approved for use in the holy sacrifice of the Mass by the U.S. bishops and were compiled by the Benedictine monks of Conception Abbey. And so it really doesn't matter what version of the Psalms that you're using here, as long as you, if you have an opportunity to follow along with us. Today, we're going to continue our look at Psalm 50. So Psalm 50 is in book 2 of the Psalms, Psalms 42 to 72. Psalms 42 to 49 are by the sons of Korah. Psalm 50 is by Asaph. Asaph in Hebrew means gather. And then Psalms 51 to 72 are all by David. So today, again, we're going to hopefully get to the end of Psalm 50. We're going to look at Psalm verses 20 to 23 of Psalm 50. And this one, again, it just simply says the prescript or the superscript of this psalm simply says Mizmor HaAsaph, a psalm of Asaph. So Asaph started off this psalm. The God of gods, the Lord, has spoken and summoned the earth. From the rising of the sun to its setting, out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God is shining forth. So Asaph comes out with just glorious praise of the Lord. And so let's pick up here at a verse. Well, let's look at a couple verses before 20, because 20 is in the middle of a strophe. So he's talking here about the God executing justice against those who don't follow him, who don't honor, reverence, and respect him. He says, so verse 18, you who see a thief and befriend him, who throw in your lot with adulterers, who unbridle your mouth for evil, and yoke your tongue to deceit. You who sit and malign your own brother, and slander your own mother's son. So clearly here, Asaph are talking about people who don't see God as their Lord, who are worshiping the God of me, myself, and I, who have no honor, reverence, and respect for the Lord. So Asaph considers these the quote unquote wicked, right? But we all know people in our lives, even members of our own family, who have turned away from the faith, who are living according to the dictates of the culture and are not living according to the tenets of our faith, who maybe have turned their backs on the Lord, who maybe have, through a family tragedy or something, have walked away from the faith for whatever reason. And so they're again living according to dictates of the culture. And the way Asaph describes this, befriending a thief, those who are trying to steal our faith away from us, right? To move us away from a deep and intimate relationship with the Lord. And part of the reason why I think this happens is because people don't have a deep and intimate relationship with the Lord. You see, our knowledge and faith of God can't just be an intellectual exercise where we're learning our faith like a subject in school. It has to be all about relationship of love and communion and intimacy. But the way that Asaph describes this kind of antithetical attitude toward faith is seeing a thief and befriending him, throwing your lot with adulterers, right? And this idea of adultery here, God, I get the primordial analogy between God and His people is a husband to his bride, right? And so sometimes the bride is unfaithful. The way God describes it many times in the scriptures, especially in the works of the prophets, is a bride who is unfaithful to her husband, right? That's how it says that's how God quote unquote feels when we reject Him. It feels like an unfaithful spouse. And that's the way Asaph describes it here as adultery. Again, we see that image over and over again in the scriptures. Who unbridle your mouth for evil right? So unbridle your mouth. So remember, a bridle is something that's on a horse, and that kind of sits in the horse's mouth. And it says, you unbridle your mouth not for good, but for evil. You know, especially when you are aggressive in your stance against the faith. When you talk with someone who is, pro-choice, for example, or someone who believes there's more than two genders, or someone doesn't understand what marriage is, or something like that. Often they can be very hostile, and they're speaking out against the basic tenets and teachings of the faith. Who yoke your tongue to deceit. Again, so a little parallelism here. Unbridling the mouth for evil and yoking your tongue to deceit. Remember, the yoke is like the oxen, right? You have the yoke that keeps the oxen moving together in the same direction and at the same pace. And so we talk about yoking ourselves to deceit. Yoking ourselves to those who who are openly and aggressively speaking out against what it means to be Catholic, speaking out against belief in God, speaking out against the about having a relationship with God because they don't believe that God exists or that God is real or that even that God matters in their life. You who sit and malign your brother and slander your own mother's son, right? Again, even members of families that that will speak out against us because we hold firm to the teachings of our faith, which was what we're talking about today. We're talking about sacred tradition. And Asaph continues to ponder these acts of those who turn their backs against the faith. You do this, and should I keep silence? Do you think that I am like you? I accuse you. Lay the charge before you. Right. So Asaph here is saying, no, I will stand with the Lord. I will stand firm no matter what you do, no matter what you decide, no matter what you say, no matter how you think, I will stand firm in my relationship with the Lord and with the teachings of the church. So this is something that's very, very important for us. We have to stand up to the truths of our faith, even when it's uncomfortable, even when we're unpopular. Remember what Jesus says, blessed are you who are persecuted falsely in my name. Remember, he calls those that are blessed. So Asaph here encouraging us to stand up for our faith, even when it's difficult, even when it's challenging, even when it's hard.
Yeah, and another reminder too is, and this comes from experience of when I wasn't making wise choices and consulting God in where my life was supposed to be, I realized I was also misrepresenting him. Well, Ace calls himself a man of God, but he, you don't really see that, and it wasn't so much just in what my decisions were saying about me, but it was a matter of, well, if he says he's listening to God, why is he doing that? Like you see the disconnect for people who don't necessarily understand how it works, but then for those who do, it either A, adds judgment from in your direction, or it puts you in a place, at least for me, once I got to the backside of it, I'm like, I just want to be out of God's way, right? I just want him to work in my life so that when things manifest, they go, how did that happen? And I can always say, well, God orchestrated that, because again, when I tried to orchestrate my life, I made a mess of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so one of the things that we need to pray for is that people see the light, right? So they're living in this world of darkness and sometimes don't even realize that they're there.
Yeah.
And they need to see the light and move toward that light. It's the light of truth and goodness and beauty. And it's almost like you're trying to look in a mirror and the mirror is cloudy and you can't really see your own reflection. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes we have to clean off that mirror, right? We have to recognize our weaknesses, recognize our sins, recognize that, you know what? There's a whole nother way of thinking and approaching life,
Yeah.
and it can't be me at the center of that.
Yeah.
And once we realize that, I think the Lord will open up all kinds of powerful opportunities for us for sure.
Well, and I will
Yeah.
say, just, and maybe you experience this too because you are in the public eye, is you become that professional Christian that sometimes, for me at least, I just want to not be that so that I can authentically love God and be in that relationship for all the reasons that I'm supposed to. not because of how people see me or because I'm on the radio or in the public eye. Like I like as I get older, I like the intimacy of just it's me and God. And then the fruits of that relationship around is because I'm following after his will and not trying to seek my own agenda.
Yeah, and I think the important thing about that is practicing what you preach, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, because if I were to go out there and say, do, prayer and fasting and all these things, and I don't do it myself,
Yeah.
I think that people can spot that a mile away,
Yeah.
that you're actually not practicing what you're preaching yourself. So it's extremely important. Like I said, I pray every day, do the rosary, do all the things that I tell people that they should be doing. I do myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important part of that witness, so that you don't come across as being fake, as what Asaph is describing here for sure.
Yep.
And finally, the last couple verses here. Mark this, you who are forgetful of God, lest I seize you and none can deliver you. A sacrifice of praise gives me honor, and to one whose way is blameless, I will show the salvation of God. Right? There you go. Seeking a deeper intimacy with God.
For more on the Psalms with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, check out Beacon of Truth weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio and streaming everywhere you listen to podcasts.